Hi, this is Taylor Woodward. Today I'm going to be giving a demonstration and a review of the digital tool called CueThink. With CueThink, students are going to create a Thinklet or a digital graphic organizer and recorded think aloud where they complete 4 steps to solve a problem. Those 4 steps are understand, plan, solve, and review. Educators can create a class with Thinklet where they can post problems from CueThink's large resource bank, or they can also create and upload their own problem. CueThink requires students and teachers to create an account and log in. CueThink accounts can be synced to either Google or Clever, and the platform is available on desktop browser as well as an app for iPad or other tablets. In the app, whether it's on browser or tablet version, students have access to many tools which can help them organize or explain their thinking as they solve a math problem. And during the solve phase, they are able to record their writings and their voice inside the app. Now we're going to take a look at both the student and educator mode for CueThink in the desktop browser version. Okay, so here we are on CueThink's desktop browser version. You can see their tagline here is Make Math Social. I think that's really cool. Their goal with this whole resource is to help students be able to explain their thinking, both verbally and by showing their work, and then be able to share that with classmates. So we're going to go ahead and dive in here and look at some of the features of CueThink. I'm going to log in. Now, right away it logs me in as an educator because I created this as a teacher. But I could switch to student mode if I wanted to view this the way that students would, and we'll do that here in a little while. The page that loads automatically is a list of the assigned problems that I have given my students. I don't actually have them assigned to particular students because I don't have any students enrolled right now. And I also haven't listed a due date, but I could if I wanted to. The problems that have happened in the past are listed as closed problems, so if they're past their due date, they're going to be under the closed problems tab. This is actually 2 versions of the same problem. This exemplar one was what was given when I took a tutorial at the beginning when I first made my account of how to use Thinklet, and this one I created myself to try to do it on my own in student mode. Up here at the top, we can look at some of the features we have under assignments. We can look at the problem bank. We can create our own problem and upload it. And we can view assigned work that we've given our students. So under problem bank, you'll see that there are lots and lots of problems we could choose from to assign our students. Each one is aligned to a standard. This particular problem, how deep is it, is aligned to a high school geometry standard. It's going to list the question here and some possible answers, so we get a little preview of what that's like. We can search the database by standard type, grade, or even the standard itself if we know particularly what we're looking for. We can also search for a title if we knew what problem we were looking for. Under reports, here's where we would go to see the progress of our students if we had any in our classes, and here's where we would go under roster to manage any classes that we had. So we'll click on that. We could create a new class and it'll give us a class code. Your students, when they make their own accounts, can type that in and be added to your class. It's very similar to like a Google Classroom type situation. And then we're able to see, we would see a list of our students, their emails, and then any annotations that they have made on someone else's projects. And we'll talk about what that looks like here as we move forward. I think I'm going to go ahead and switch to student mode at this point, and we'll look at some features from the student's perspective. So if I was a student and I was using CueThink, when I first logged into my account, I would see any assigned problems to me, and I would see any overdue problems that I hadn't finished yet down here at the bottom. You'll see that I have that same tutorial version of the problem, and it says here that I can continue my Thinklet. So the Thinklet is the place where I do all of my thinking, where I do all of my recording of my thoughts and solving of the problem. It's that 4-step process. This one says I need to continue it because I haven't finished it yet. This one is a completed version, and I've made it twice. I've gone through and changed a little bit about my presentation, so there are now 2 versions of my problem, which I think is pretty cool. So sometimes the problems are going to be fairly open-ended, and your students might create more than one version of their solution because there's more than one way to solve the problem. I think that's a very cool feature of Thinklet. I think we'll go ahead and take a look at this one. Even though it's completed, we will click on it just to see what the features are of, oops, I'm going to back up just a second to see the features of creating the Thinklet. So I clicked on these 3 dots up here. I can either create a new Thinklet, I can edit this one, or I can delete it. I'm going to edit. Okay, so here are those 4 steps I talked about. There's understand, plan, solve, and review. So your students are going to start with the understand phase. They're going to read the scenario. They're able to highlight things they think are important with the highlight tool. As soon as they have highlighted them, they can click add to add them to this list of what do you notice. So we can erase this. Let's say we're going to erase this giant bag of gumballs thing. And I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to re-highlight now, giant bag of gumballs, and then add it. So now there it just showed up under what do you notice. So all these highlighted things I've added to what do I notice. I can also cross things out. There was some conflicting information that I didn't think was going to help me solve the problem. I could cross it out. And under here, where it says, what do you wonder about, I can list things that maybe I'm thinking might help me solve the problem. Eventually, maybe I have some thoughts about how to go about solving the problem. I have said, I wonder if I can double the number of gumballs he has at the end to get to my answer. And it looks like I didn't finish this sentence. I wonder if it is over 100 gumballs. I think maybe my answer is going to be more than 100. So I'm going to estimate my answer down here at the bottom and then move on to the plan phase. Here's where I'm going to choose my strategy and figure out how I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to write out a plan. I can choose from their list of possible problem-solving strategies, like draw a picture, work backwards, model it with manipulatives, or I could add my own strategy. If I had my own idea that wasn't any of these things, your student could type that in and then add it to the list. Over here on the right side, they're going to write out what their actual plan is. So this is what they're going to follow in the solve phase. So right here, we're going to write our plan, and then when we solve it, we're going to follow that plan. Okay, so here's where things get really cool. Your students have this whiteboard space to work with to solve their problem. They also have scratch paper over here, so if they ever want to do any calculations or markings that they don't actually want to be part of their final presentation, they can do it over here, and this is scratch paper, so it just goes away whenever you're finished with it. It won't actually show up as part of your final project. So you can draw. That's how I've done all this. I've used the draw tool. You can highlight things, you could add photos, you could add text. So right here I wanted to write 10 gumballs and I used the text tool to be able to do that. We could also add equations. So if you're using this for maybe a higher level type problem. Maybe you're working with high school, you can actually put in some pretty complex formulas, even up to some calculus here. We can also add some tables, some stamps. We could stamp money. So on the opposite end of the spectrum here, if you're working with elementary kids, very young kids, you could use counters, money, number blocks here, even a stick person, all kinds of things you can add into your workspace. If you want to erase things, you can select this box and get rid of things by deleting there. So I've deleted the A out of my word gumballs. Now I'm going to write it back in as soon as I choose a color here. So gumballs, there we go. And I can add shapes, that's right here. So lots of different tools we can work with. And then when your students are ready, they can record their voice. So it's going to record anything that happens on this screen as well as their voice. So they could start with maybe just the gumballs and then start recording their voice and add their work and explain as they go. You can also add a new page. So on the second page, I wanted to check my answer. After I got to 120 gumballs, I added this page with a number line so that I could check my work. And here I added some arrows that's what you see drawn here. And then finally, when they're done, they're going to push stop. Their recording is going to upload and be saved, and then they're going to go to the review tab. So here's where they get to check. Have I done all of the right things? Does my answer make sense? Did I include units? Did I check my work? They can watch the video here, make sure they're happy with it, make sure their voice is clear, the writing is clear. Maybe I didn't use highlighter, but if you did, make sure that you use that appropriately. You can type in your final answer and then submit the Thinklet to your class. So as soon as I do that, now there are 3 versions of this that I have done. I can play the video again. I'm going to skip forward into it a little ways here so you can see some of my writing eventually here. Let me back up just a smidge. Okay, so here's I've done some writing. Maybe at this point, my teacher, as she's grading, wants to make a comment. So you can add annotation. So students can watch each other's videos, or the teacher can be watching the videos and then make a comment at any point in time. So I might say, your explanation here is great. Cool. Okay, so that comment now is going to show up at exactly 2 minutes and 19 seconds into the video. Let's go ahead and go back to our home page now, or actually here. I'm going to click on this 4 squares up here at the top. This is where I could go to see all of the Thinklets that my whole class has posted. So now I could watch somebody else's Thinklet. I could add those annotations, those comments to it. Or maybe we're in class and we're going to watch each other's Thinklet and then talk about it in person. Who knows? I think this is where that social aspect really comes in. Students are not only explaining their own work, they're able to analyze and critique the work of someone else, which is really, really a very important skill and one of those 21st century skills we want our students to be learning. Okay, so now you've seen a little bit about how to use CueThink. You've seen some of its features. So in my opinion, I think this app is definitely an effective way to capture student thinking and for students to communicate that with their classmates and with me. One of my biggest complaints about online math homework has always been the lack of ability to capture a student's work and thinking. So I really appreciate the features that this app has for that purpose. I could watch the little videos and see what my students are thinking as they solve a problem. I love how big the resource is. There are so many different problems to choose from, and you can upload your own. So um, definitely not a lack of things to choose from there. I love that about CueThink. Probably my biggest complaint is that I use the iPad version to record my ThinkLit, and I will say it was a little slow moving, like not quite as quick as what we're probably all pretty used to with technology in this day and age. So I think it could probably use some updates. Sometimes the whiteboard didn't always recognize when I was trying to write on it, and it would lag behind a little bit, but not to the point where it was completely impeding my ability to explain my thinking or my work. So I think the benefits outweigh the downsides with this. Again, with all those features, it's definitely easier to use if you have a touch screen, but not impossible. I did try using the desktop version to do some of the writing. It's a little more difficult, as we all know, harder to use any kind of pen feature on a desktop than on an iPad, but I don't think that that's going to prevent me from trying it with my students at least once this year to see how it goes. I'd like to see how my students respond to that, and whether or not they feel like it's too difficult to work with. And I also want to see what kind of comments they put on each other's ThinkLits. I think that's another cool feature, that they can comment on each other's videos. Definitely builds those communication skills that we're trying to work with in our students. Last but not least, I think that you have to choose carefully what age group you use this with. I think it's probably possible to use this in maybe even a science setting. So maybe it could be cross-curricular, but I think needs to stick with definitely not super young students. It's a little bit difficult to figure things out. The tutorial was extremely helpful. I think if I hadn't taken the tutorial, it would have taken me longer to figure out how to work the features of the ThinkLit part, but not impossible. And so for that reason, I just say I think older students, at least upper elementary, would do better with this than your younger students. There's not a lot of things to say, oh, okay, now you're ready for the next step. So you kind of just have to know that you're ready to move on. And so, again, that's why I think it would be better for upper elementary. But other than that, honestly, I really don't have a lot of complaints with this. And I'm pretty excited to use it with my class. I had never heard of this before I started doing some research for this project. So I'm excited, and I'm definitely going to try it with my students this year. Hope you guys enjoy